let's make sure that when we look back on this experience, it's not all dark and dreary. If it is, shame on us, because I think we're better than that. However, let's look back and say, hey, you know what? Because of this pandemic, look at the digital capacity that our 1,000 teachers now are comfortable using things that had we put a plan together and said, how can we get the digital capacity of our teachers to improve? We had a 10-year plan, we'd have fought over it, we'd have been arguing over it. We just did it because it needed to get done.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are so thrilled to have you here. I'm Erin McClintock, EVERFI's Head of Community Engagement, Impact, and Education, and I have the honor of leading today's conversation with educators from across the U.S. In the spring of 2020, the pandemic forced nearly all of the 55 million U.S. children under the age of 18 to begin learning entirely from home. These children lost access to many of the basic supports that schools provide for students, things like meals, internet access. But students also lost out on the daily support services that many of them need to help manage their well-being. The educators we talk to every day have shared that getting students back on track academically is only half the battle. They're equally focused on equipping them with the important life skills needed to succeed outside the classroom, which is why they're placing a renewed focus on topics like financial well-being, mental well-being, and college and career readiness, which is where all of you come in. Today, we are so honored to be bringing together voices from educators across the country, from New York City to Chicago, from Greenville, South Carolina to Santa Clarita, California, to share their unique perspectives on a year like no other. Let's meet our panelists.
My name is David LeBaron. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Assessment for the William S. Hart Union High School District here in Southern California.
Hi, my name is Charlene Clark. I serve as the Senior Director of Post-Secondary Readiness within the Division of Multilingual Learners here in New York City Department of Education.
My name is Rob Rhodes. I serve as the Director of School Counseling for Greenville County School District in South Carolina.
I am Stephanie Miller Henderson, and I currently serve as a counselor for Smith Elementary in the University Village area.
Thinking back to roughly a year ago, March 15th, 2020, if you knew then what you know now, having lived through the past year, what would you have told yourself at that time about remote learning or about education in general?
I think what we realized were there was a variety of valuable strategies, structures, resources that select schools were utilizing that was beneficial to a variety of other schools. And here in New York City, we have almost 1,800 schools. So trying to, allow for that shared learning was a little bit difficult at the beginning, but with the greater accessibility in this virtual space, it opened up a lot more cross-collaboration and sharing of resources. And then I think we would have also paid a lot more attention to digital literacy skills, right, needed by families to fully engage in remote learning early on.
Well, I would have to say this is not a dream. This is real. And, we would definitely prepare ahead of time for some of the things that we had to do in terms of remote learning. And I think folks did a really good job in creating a method to reach students across our district who would not have been able to be reached otherwise. But I think looking back to really make sure we had some things in place, like the importance of our community partnership and some of the outreach that we need to connect with students. And that's a very important area to me is the mental health and wellness students. When we started this, it became very apparent that we were, what we always know, but we don't realize the level that we're serving as a key, consistent provider for all students. The routine, the access, the daily meals that we provide students in our district, breakfast and lunch to students throughout our county.
So for me, it was really important that I would be able to find free resources that were actually comprehensive, a resource that actually is able to assess where the students are and how they've grown. So as an educator, I just want to say thank you so much for your compassion and your willingness to give and to serve students who will definitely be the next generation of professionals.
Well, it's interesting because we actually went from classroom instruction on Friday to remote learning district-wide, 23,000 students the following Wednesday. And so that transition was fast and furious, and it was just all consuming. But if I could go back and start over, I would spend much more time really helping my teachers understand the difference between what was expected, or what they could accomplish with classroom instruction, and then what they should really expect to accomplish with distance learning, because that is where the struggle occurs. We were never trained for distance instruction.
I'm curious, did you uncover any strengths within yourself or within your colleagues, within your students, within your districts during this time?
We had, our academics team developed in a quick turnaround. It was amazing. A virtual platform to reach students at their developmental level by grade. But how do they get that? How do they access it? A lot of families don't have it, Wi-Fi. And so when we're at school, we're not thinking so much about that. It's like, get out your Chromebook and everybody's connected. But when we go to communities, and we were setting up, which was really amazing how this was done, but we learned so much about where the needs are, so visibly different. When we would set up, we would have buses, our transportation department. And this was such a team. It really reminded us how important it is that everybody in our system works together in education.
Some of the strengths that I saw was definitely educators are fully committed. They were going above and beyond, working endless nights, multiple days, weekends to access their students, to access their families, to once again, especially once in thinking about digital literacy, right?
And we just threw everyone in the pool and said, start swimming. And it was a little hectic. But to see the response, because people, we, myself included, need to see beyond ourselves to realize what we can accomplish. And I think this pandemic, distance learning, the closure of in-classroom schools forced us to realize if we're going to get this done, we got to see beyond ourselves. We can't focusing on how it's going to be a bummer for us. And I've seen our staff, our faculty, teachers, administration, everybody jump on board and say, what do we need to do to get this done?
It's important for our students to have life skills, especially in such a changing society, a changing culture. We're becoming more and more global. And, it's not just about what they're able to learn or attain as, a resident in the city of Chicago, but students have to have the tools to be able to adapt on a global level.
So what would you tell your future self about having lived through this particular moment in history?
That we have to continue to strive to position our young people for success, position them to have family sustaining outcomes in their near future, whether they're moving on to college or directly into a career or into a vocational program, that it is our duty, purpose, and responsibility to set them up to be able to navigate spaces outside of our K-12 system?
Well, I think one of the things that oftentimes we forget is the importance of asking people, "What do you need?" I think that can't be underscored enough. When you're helping educators, asking them, their input, asking them, how can we support you in this? and getting into that dialogue where you're learning and you're adapting what you have the capacity to provide to fit a need.
We have wellness centers at our district in all of our schools now, and we had them going into it before it happened, before we closed. But we've made that a focus now going forward, and not just for our students, but for our teachers as well. I think that the value of having that focus will carry that into the future. So those two things right there, I think, are just huge pieces. And again, as mentioned before, just the will of our teachers looking back and saying, look what we accomplished when we realized we had to. Let's not lose that drive. Let's not lose that teamwork, collaborative feeling, because everyone came together.
The pandemic has compounded racial and economic disparities in learning and achievement, but it's also shown a light on this important topic, which will hopefully mean more focus on solutions. We're excited for what lies ahead, and we hope that you are too.